Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Welcome to the University of Southampton School of Psychology podcast. My name is Jacob Jewell. I'm an associate professor of psychology at the University of Southampton, and this is the podcast where we take a look at the people within the School of Psychology at the University of Southampton. Specifically, we're going to learn about the educational and career pathways of professors, lecturers, students, as well as alumni. And I hope we don't just learn about these individuals. I hope we can also learn from their experiences pursuing their education and careers. So let me introduce today's guest, Megan Charles. Megan, who joins me remotely from London, completed her bachelor's degree in psychology at the University of Southampton. She's now a senior data consultant at Accenture. How she got from her psychology degree to her current position? Let's talk to her and find out. Megan Charles, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
And you. So I thought it would be a good idea to have you on the podcast because I think you're a good example of a way that we can showcase the breadth of things that one can do with a degree in psychology. So I just want to talk through your education and talk about how each step along the way got you closer to what you're currently doing. And yeah, but let me first just ask, where are you originally from?
I'm from just outside of London. So I grew up in Northolt, just like northwest London, and I'm not far from there now.
What was your first school?
My first school was called Yedding Infant School. It was just like a local comprehensive. Yeah, and I just stayed in the local area through primary school as well.
Okay. Where did you go from there?
And then from there, I went to secondary school, which was just up the road. And I considered going to a different school a little bit further away for college or sixth form, but I actually ended up staying at my same school, Barnhill Community High, which was about 2 minutes around the corner from where I grew up.
At college, what were the subjects that you chose to do?
So I did biology, English, literature and language, psychology, and I did an AS in business studies as well, which I ended up dropping. So I just had those three.
So obviously you had an interest in psychology at that point, and so you took psychology. What about biology and the languages? What was your thought behind those ones?
I think for me, there's probably a common theme in that I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I tried to keep my options as open as possible. I really enjoyed biology. I thought it would be good to have a science alongside my social science. And I enjoyed it and had a good teacher too. So yeah, I decided to carry on with biology. And then English, literature and language. I was good at it. I also enjoyed it and thought, again, it was another one, a good subject to have that would keep my career options open. So yeah, I kind of kept them for enjoyment and then also the practicality of their applications later on.
So you mentioned your career options. At that point, when you were doing your A-levels, did you have any career options in mind, or were you just have vague interests and you knew that these subjects might help you along the way? What were you thinking at that time?
It was tricky. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I think for me, so I came from like a low socioeconomic background, didn't have a variety of careers around me. So I really have been just figuring things out as I went. I enjoyed psychology. I looked into being a psychologist and I knew that there were different types of psychologists that you could be. So like clinical or educational, for example. I thought they could be good options. Wasn't entirely sure, was a bit daunted by the career path of studying for so long. So my other option, I think a friend's sister was a management consultant, which I'd never heard before, but it sounded cool. She was earning a good amount of money and she was managing lots of different things and really like problem solving and working with businesses. So I think at that point, I was really like, I could be a psychologist or I could work in business in some capacity, but I really didn't know what that looked like, to be honest. So, that kind of is reflected in my choices again.
So you said you wanted to be a psychologist and you, I guess, acknowledged that there were different types of psychologists. At that point, were you more specifically thinking a clinical psychologist or, cognitive, developmental, social, or again, were you just wide open?
I think at that point, it was educational psychologist. So my mum works in and has worked in a special needs school her whole life. So I've been around that a lot. Okay. So working in education was really interesting to me. So that was an option. And then more like a counselling psychologist, I think. So more like mental health support and that sort of thing. That was really interesting to me as well. Yeah, I think when I spoke to a teacher about it, they said there's not much demand for educational psychologists at the time. So it kind of put me off a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah. I had different ideas, but mainly those two, I would say, in terms of psychology.
At what point did you make the decision that definitely you're going to study psychology at university? And I guess what was it that kind of tipped the scales in that direction?
I think it's your first year of college, from sixth form, that you start thinking about subjects. To me, it just seemed the most obvious. And at the time, my understanding was almost like you study psychology and then you'll be a psychologist. So it was quite linear. And I was like, oh, this makes the most sense. Whereas, for example, like English, I didn't really know, I had no concept of what kind of career paths that could lead to. And I was getting quite linear in my thinking. I thought, oh, well, maybe I'd have to be a journalist or some. I didn't understand that actually, you could apply it to so many things. So at the time I thought I might want to be a psychologist. So it makes sense to study psychology. And that was kind of as far as my thinking went.
Okay. How did you end up then specifically studying psychology at the University of Southampton?
So I had a couple friends in the year above me that had gone to Southampton and kind of put it on my radar. And then, I don't know if you're aware, but there was the Access to Southampton scheme.
Okay.
With Amma Wuzia that was running it. And I think she came to our school and did like a talk. It was a scheme you could apply to, and then you kind of do like a summer school. So you visit the university a couple times over your AS year, I think. And then over the summer, you do a project. And if you're successful, you can get a lowered entry into the university, which in the end I didn't need. But I think just the process of engaging with the summer school, meeting people, like seeing the university itself, I think that really kind of set my heart on Southampton. And also it wasn't too far away from home. I didn't really want to be away from home, but I did want a different experience.
Okay, so you moved to Southampton to start your degree. How did that move and how did that transition go for you?
In terms of like socially, it was quite difficult. It's the first time I've been away from home, obviously, for a long period of time. But in terms of the academic transition, I think it initially felt like a bit of a step up, but I think I did it quite well. There was a lot of support. I really enjoyed it because it was nice to be studying all the different modules. I'm used to just studying psychology broadly at A level, whereas this was going into depth in all the different modules. And also it was nice to have the change of kind of pace and lifestyle, and having more flexibility in your day. And then all the other things that come with university, like meeting new people and, having new experiences. So yeah, I think the transition went well for me, to be honest. It was really positive.
You mentioned, I guess, more broadly, the change in lifestyle, but you mentioned the flexibility that you have. And I think you're just referring to the fact that, you're not forced to sit down in a classroom and study for a certain amount of hours. You have your module lectures and workshops or sessions that you attend, but much of your day is self-determined or self-directed. How did you react specifically to that? Did you immediately think, okay, I need to make sure that I'm on campus during the entire day? Or how did you feel your way through learning how to manage your time when you got to university?
I think, honestly, I didn't need to put anything in place. It actually really suited me quite well, having my own autonomy. I found, I'd come on campus for the lectures and everything, but I was able to just study at home. I think when it came to the more intense, like revision periods, I'd probably spend more time on campus in the library with friends. But I think kind of before that point, like very manageable. I would work like every week. I think I had a really good balance. Again, I enjoyed the kind of flexibility of like working from home and get like not having to be in a classroom was really nice.
What was your attitude towards your studies? Were you someone that was really keen on getting a first, for example? Were you neurotic or were you more laid back about it? What was your approach?
This is a really good word because I was going to say neurotic and I didn't know if I wanted to say it on the podcast, but I was neurotic. I wanted a first. I was going to take it very personally if I didn't get a first. Okay. I think I probably didn't enjoy myself as much as I could and should have at university because I was so fixated on academic performance. But, I think I can't regret it too much. I did learn a lot and I was very career driven from the moment that I arrived at university. So not only was I studying, I was often involved in lots of extracurricular things, but they were more career focused and like quite intense. So yeah, I think neurotic is a really good word, to be honest.
Okay, so you start university, you go through a year, you're halfway through your second year. At that point, what are your thoughts about your long-term career goals?
Yeah, so cue more neuroticism. So as soon as I was in year one, I started looking at, my options, and I came across the thing called student consultancy. I'm not sure if it's still run, but that was run at university, and you can get involved in consulting. And I was really close with what was going on in the careers centre. I'm not sure what it's called now, sorry, but and they were running all sorts of events on internships and placements and preparing you for the interviews and all the application process and the tests. So as soon as I got to uni, this was kind of all on my radar. And I became really aware that typically a lot of people start looking for summer internships and placements. If that's typically more for like business students, for example, will do like a placement year. So I was kind of just taking it one step at a time. So I didn't know what I wanted to do long term, but I was thinking like, what can I do now just to get a bit of experience? And it seemed that those kind of internships were what you do. But I started thinking about a year in employment, like more seriously. And so it wasn't something that was offered on our course already mentioned, but I knew other courses did it. So I started just exploring, speaking with the faculty, seeing if it was an option. Turns out it was. You can pause your degree for a year, work, and come back. So when I knew that was possible, I then started applying to all these different internships. And I was looking at specifically more business-focused opportunities. So just like the Big Four, consulting, technology, that kind of area. So I think at this point, I'd maybe looked into psychology a bit more, maybe thought that's not for me. I think something for me was really important is just earning money, like just for social mobility. So I was thinking I'm going to go for the business route for a little bit. And then I applied to quite a few different ones, went through all the processes of tests and interviews and going to London to these big offices. And then I got an internship or a year in employment at IBM. So that was where I think by that point decided business was something I was interested in.
Okay, so you knew that with other degrees offered at the university that some students that would take a year out of their studies to simply have an internship or have a job and get some experience, and then they would come back and finish their degree after that. And so that was the thing that kind of got you thinking about the possibility of doing this. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. At that time, I can recall that you came and you talked to me and you were asking about this, and nobody in psychology had yet done this. However, now it's something that people more regularly do, particularly between their second and their third year. Basically, they find their own job, and sometimes it's just volunteer placements as well. And the university now has a scheme where you can leave your studies, but you don't necessarily leave all of the privileges of being a university student, like you keep your university email, for example.
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm curious about is when you decided that you wanted to go for this, where did you even start in terms of looking for jobs? I mean, if you start looking for jobs, you're going to find all sorts of things. You're going to find higher level jobs for people who've already been in a career for 15 years. You're going to find jobs that are meant to be more permanent. But I guess I'm curious where you can find jobs that are just going to be a year long, that are specifically for students that are thinking about taking a year out. What was that process of finding and applying for jobs like for you?
It was quite straightforward for me just because I was kind of in those circles. I was part of another scheme. I can't remember what it was called, but it was to support people from low socioeconomic backgrounds to access these kind of professional careers. And those kind of companies, if you think like Deloitte, PwC, McKinsey, these companies often have like graduate schemes, and then they'll do internships, and a year in employment is just like another offering that they have. And often it's kind of part of the pipeline. So you might do the internship, and then that will mean that you might get a place on the year in employment program. And if you do well there, it might mean that you get a graduate offer, so you can go back to university with your grad offer. So I kind of was exposed to them and was aware of these different programs that were available. So I started just applying to all the graduate schemes that I was aware of. So I wasn't really looking for jobs generally. I was very specifically looking at, I think they were called industrial placements offered by consulting companies.
And did you say IBM is where you work?
Yeah, so I worked at IBM. I applied for quite a few. I mean, like rejection's quite standard. I must have applied for maybe 10 or something, and then landed on IBM. Actually, I met someone on campus when they do the campus careers fairs, and there was someone who was already on the scheme. And so I spoke to them, and they kind of made me more aware of it and ended up referring me to their manager as an option to apply for their role. So I applied and then went through the process of interviewing and giving a presentation and doing like group interviews. And I worked at IBM then in my third year.
I imagine some students thinking about this might be curious as to what did you do on a daily basis?
Yeah.
And how did you find that adjustment going back to, I guess, perhaps a more structured schedule for you?
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. It was a big shock for me, honestly. Like, I didn't know anyone who had a corporate career, and I had no concept of what it looks like, of what's expected of you, of the norms of working in that type of environment. So it was a big shock. My role was in recruitment administration for their graduate consulting program. My day-to-day looked like speaking with candidates, arranging their interviews, doing all the admin for their recruitment, supporting with their onboarding and their induction training. Really, you're just kind of doing a role, but the idea is that you're in the company and you have access to other people to talk to and to learn more about what other kind of careers are available to you. And I was fortunate in that because I was working with a consulting kind of graduate program. I was seeing, at that time, I wanted to go into consulting. So I actually was seeing what it looks like to work in consulting, and I was networking with the people in those places. And so the role was more like an in. To get you the exposure and for you to just build your skills and like business acumen.
If you wanted to have gone back to work for them as soon as you graduated, could you have done so?
Yeah, so I was offered a role with them. It was in their consulting team. I think it was like people consulting or like an HR kind of consulting role. And so, I could have taken that. At that time, I wasn't so sure on working in business, at least in not that capacity. Throughout the year, I became really apparent that like impact is really important to me, like positive, like social impact or environmental impact. And so that my curiosity really started growing. And so it just didn't feel like a right next step for me at that time to do a consulting role, which is interesting because obviously now I'm in consulting. But so I just returned to uni and I was a bit like, I've done this thing, doesn't quite feel so right anymore. I've had my heart set on it for a few years. So like, what do I do now? So that's how I came back to uni.
It sounded like you had a little bit of thinking that you needed to do in terms of what the next step would be for you.
Yeah.
And I guess, you have your last year during that time to figure that out. I want to get back to that, but I want to go back just about university life in general, because there's a couple other things I wanted to ask you about. Did you get involved in any societies or extracurricular activities while you were a student?
I did, but again, they were very career-focused ones, so less of like the sports and things like that. But so I got involved there was a society, I think, called like Business, Environment and Ethics Students. And it was almost like a small consultancy for like sustainability and social impact. So we went round to different companies in the local community and helped them improve their social impact and environmental impact.
Okay.
I did a lot of student ambassadoring as well as a good side income, but also it was nice I got experience through that. It was more work experience of delivering presentations, meeting new people, showing people around the campus. So I think they were kind of the main sort of things. And I mentioned student consultancy as well. And then I did the voluntary like research position within the faculty. I think you could have got involved in research. So I was supporting in my third year in that as well. Very career focused, to be honest.
Okay. No, that's good. Well, it's good to know that there are societies that you can join for fun, and you can join other ones that, not that they're not fun, they can be fun, but they are also more career focused.
Yeah.
You mentioned getting involved with research. Did you only do that in your third year, or did you do that ahead of time?
I think that was only in my third year. And I think that was supporting with like the admin of some of the research.
Well, the reason why I ask about that is because I remember you worked with me.
Yeah.
In the third year, you volunteered with me.
Yeah.
Typically, the way, though, it's now called the voluntary internship scheme.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Is that students apply, but I always encourage people to seek out their own experience outside of the scheme as well, which is what you did. And so I wasn't sure if you went through just the scheme or if your experience was mostly with what I did.
I think it was mostly with what you did, yeah.
Okay. And I can remember one of the things that you did, and I was really pleased with it, is you did a voiceover. We needed participants in a study to hear instructions over headphones.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
yeah, I remember that now.
yeah, and I wanted a British accent rather than my accent. So you did that for me as well. So I want to get back to your third year and thinking about what you were going to do after that.
Yeah.
But to use what we were just talking about as a launching pad, because you got involved in research or sought out to get involved in research your third year, outside of the research that students normally do in their third year, which is their third year project, were you still thinking about a career in research? Did you have this idea that you would want to do research in an academic setting, like what most of your instructor did? Was that on your mind at that time?
Yeah, so funny you mention it. So at this time I was becoming really aware of sustainability, and it was something that I was really interested in. So I started reaching out to, I think I might have gone to an event or something at the university and met one of the professors in sustainability at Southampton and was speaking to him a little bit more. And I started supporting him with some sustainability projects. So not research focused at that time, but I think he was developing a documentary about sustainability. So I was supporting him. And it was after that I was thinking, actually, maybe I could do some research. Maybe that could be a good path. So as I was working with him a little bit more, we actually started developing like a proposal for a PhD.
Okay.
Yeah, so I wanted to study the behavior and attitudes of people who eat meat versus people who don't. And it was very much bringing in my psychology, understanding of people and choices and behavior, but with the sustainability kind of focus. So I was working with him, and at that point, a PhD was something I was really interested in. I thought that would be the logical next step.
And when you were thinking about doing a PhD, did you imagine yourself staying within the walls of academia, or again, taking that outside into the corporate world? What were your thoughts?
Honestly, at that time, I had no concept of what you do with a PhD if it's not something like becoming a psychologist or becoming a doctor. Or I honestly had no idea. So I didn't really think beyond the PhD. I think now with more experience, I know that I could have gone into policy, for example, or, work with think tanks, or got involved in applying my research socially and how we can encourage behavior change. But definitely at the time, it was more short-term thinking of this is a good next step and I'll figure everything out at a later point.
You did end up doing a master's degree in sustainability after university. When you started that, were you also then intending to do the PhD afterwards, or were you just saying, okay, this is my next step, we'll see where it takes me?
Yeah, so I applied for the PhD and I didn't get it. So I was kind of this is towards the end of my third year. So I was panicking a little bit, if I'm honest. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking okay, what do I do now? And I was thinking, initially that PhD was my route into sustainability, but I was like, I don't have any other educational evidence of my environmental credentials. So what shall I do? And I thought a master's would be a good next step for that. So I applied for the master's and got it. And I was like, okay, that's the direction I'm going in. And then I didn't really, again, know what I could do after. I knew one role was on my radar was being a sustainability advisor. And obviously you can do that at loads of different companies. So once I finished my third year, I did a short 2-week internship at a property developer company with their sustainability team. And so that was part of my effort of trying to figure out what I could do, how I can actually apply my master's when I'm done. So yeah, I had some ideas, but not set in stone again.
A lot of people, they apply to do their master's degree, they haven't been accepted to a PhD program to do immediately after that. Were you hoping that you could then apply for a PhD while you're doing your master's degree?
Yeah, I still did have the idea. So my master's was in environmental strategy, and it was at Surrey, and they had a lot of really good research going on at the time. So I thought that was a really good option, and, there could be an opportunity. But I think I was also keeping my other options open of different career paths. That's why I did the internship. So it was very much a possibility. But I knew how competitive and how difficult they are to get, having been through the process. So I was kind of keeping my options open a little bit.
The other thing I wanted to talk about that you mentioned was after not getting the PhD, having this feeling of panic, like, what am I going to do next? And, you're going to be
Yes.
done with your studies pretty soon. Knowing what you know now, if you could go back and talk to Megan in her third year to help her not be
Yeah.
perhaps as panicked, what would you say?
I would say you'll figure it out. And I know that's not solid advice. At the time I really did think it was the end of the world if I didn't get a job, or if and I really didn't understand that you do just figure things out. And I think I would just reaffirm that it's okay to not know and to take it one step at a time. I think I always put a lot of pressure on myself to know exactly where I wanted to go. But I think, as I've kind of proven, you can also just have like a squiggly career path, and that's also fine. So I think it would just be more like reassurance. Just keep following your interest and just keep going, and you will arrive at some place where you're quite happy with where you are.
I guess one reason why I wanted to ask that is because I think it's a really common experience that people are not necessarily prepared for.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was going to be doing the year after I finished my final year of university until the day of my final university. Before I went to go take my final exam, I got a call. But I think not knowing, having to cope with uncertainty about your future is just part of being a young adult.
Exactly. And I think also because I've done everything I could, right, until that point. So it's not like I was only thinking about it now. I did actually have a lot of experience up until that point. So I was always going to find something. So I'm not the type of person who would just kind of leave it and then panic. I'd literally done everything I could. So something was going to happen at some point.
So I want to talk about your master's a little bit more, but I want to finish up a few loose strings with your undergraduate. So in your third year, what did you do your final research project on? And who did you work with?
This is really funny. Yeah, so I worked with Dr. Sarah Kirby, and she's a health psychologist. And I was looking at student mental health and career readiness, which was really interesting because of what I was going through. But I think a team at the university had developed something called a graduate capital model, and it was looking at all the different capital that graduates need to be career ready. So I was looking at how poor mental health could impact career readiness. So I was going through that myself as well. So yeah, it was interesting. And actually some of my research ended up being used and published in an article a couple of years down the line, which was really nice.
Yeah. So I want to get onto the master's degree, but you were hyper-focused on doing well as an undergraduate. What a lot of good students do naturally when they have high standards and a clear goal is that they figure out all sorts of strategies to get there. Are there any tricks or strategies that you learned to help you revise for exams or help you manage your time that you think would be useful for current undergraduates or people who are about to start their undergraduate studies?
Yeah, I think for me it was a very type A approach. I was very organized, very on top of everything, had all my admin in check. I think the biggest piece of advice, and what I still use now, is just breaking things down. I always would feel overwhelmed. You feel like you're at the bottom of a mountain when you're looking at your end goal, and actually just breaking it down into smaller chunks was a lot easier. So instead of thinking, I've got this massive exam, I'd already be thinking ahead and thinking, okay, this week we're just going to focus on this thing, and I'd forget, everything else. It'd be just this content of this lecture, for example, and really breaking it down so it's more manageable, because sometimes that, standing at the bottom of the mountain is paralyzing, and that could lead to me not doing work because I'm so overwhelmed. So yeah, definitely breaking things down and making it more manageable is my piece of advice, I think.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the master's degree. So I know it was in sustainability, but what was the official course title? So
my master's was environmental strategy at the University of Surrey. So at that point, I had my heart pretty set on an environmental career or social impact career, or something that I considered having a positive impact.
And most master's degrees, you usually do a bit of research or a dissertation. Did you do one?
Yes. So obviously, I think dissertations are really good opportunities to get deeper into a topic you're interested in. And if we're thinking about a career, it's a good opportunity to demonstrate your skills in a specific area, and you can kind of use your dissertation to maybe get a job in that area. But at the time, I had a real interest in the benefits of nature for mental health. And it was one of those things again where I didn't know what that was going to turn out to be. I don't know what career that really could have applied to, but it was something I was really interested in. And, nature is something everyone can access, and it's very good for us. So I used my dissertation to explore that a little bit more. And I looked at people's attitudes to receiving a green prescription for anxiety and depression. So that's when GPs can prescribe people some time in nature to support them with their mental health, like whether preventative or maybe treating them. So I did that, and really, really interesting. And, by the end was kind of an expert in all the science behind the benefits of nature. Then as I did and always had done, I was getting involved in lots of things outside of my course. And I went to a talk which was being delivered by an ex-NHS psychologist. And she was talking about all the same research I just had, my head into, all about the benefits of nature. And she was starting a charity all about connecting people with nature for mental health. And she had designed a 10-week program. And she really wanted this to be a structured thing and taking it away from being a hippy-dippy kind of concept to an evidence-based backed program. So I met her at this talk, and we really hit it off. I didn't know where my dissertation was going to lead me, but it had led me to this person where, we were very much on the same kind of level. And so I sent her an email afterwards, and we went to Kew Gardens and we went for a walk, and, she was talking about this charity she's setting up and how she needs support with it. And kind of offered me, to be honest, the role of, we didn't know what it would be at the time, but we ended up calling it operations manager, of supporting her set up this amazing charity called Dose of Nature. And so, my dissertation really prepared me for that role. And I think that happened a couple months before I was finishing my master's.
When you finished your master's, you entered that role?
Yeah, so I took a couple weeks off, and then I started that role with her in her kitchen.
Okay.
Jumped in and was just helping from everything from cleaning the floors to taking clients on walks, to training volunteers, to delivering corporate talks about the benefits of nature as a means of us getting funding for the charity, applying for funding, strategizing, building relationships. It was very broad, very much just managing everything and kind of laying the foundations to get the charity off the ground.
That sounds like really excellent experience. I'm just curious about the charity itself.
Yeah.
People who use the charity, walk us through what it looks like to them.
Yeah, these are people who are typically struggling with their mental health. Maybe they've tried other things up until that point, the more typical routes, and they haven't got anything, what they needed. Their experience can range from a little bit of anxiety to maybe experiencing psychosis. So there's very broad in terms of what you could be experiencing. And they would have gone to their GP, and their GP would know about the program. Obviously, it was only a couple of GPs initially, and expanded and grew. But then go to their GP, and then their GP will say, well, we've got this program Dose of Nature, I'll tell you a little about it. And if they're quite positive, even if they're a bit hesitant, to be honest, they might refer them to us, and they'd have a conversation with our psychologist, with Alison, who was the co-founder. So she can tell them a little bit more and really tell them about the benefits of nature. And then from then they would join, and then they would be matched with a volunteer for 10 weeks, where they would go out into nature once a week. And the volunteer the idea was to build their connection with nature, right? And then towards the end, they've got this free tool that they feel confident in using to support their mental health. And so the volunteer would be helping them engage with nature in whichever way works for them. There's some people like music, for example. So maybe they would go out into nature and listen to some music or make some music together, or others that were a bit more skeptical, maybe it was just a walk in nature outside, and maybe that was groundbreaking for them. For others that are a little bit more involved, maybe it was hugging some trees, but it definitely wasn't like that, for everyone. Yeah. But the idea was you're outside, you're engaging your senses, you're being more mindful, and you're building your confidence of spending time in nature. And then you'll see the benefits, so you do it more.
So I could see where, for our students at the University of Southampton, this sounds like a really good charity and something that they might want to get involved in some capacity as a volunteer or an employee. If we have students who are interested in this, other than just Googling Dose of Nature, what should they do?
I think follow Dose of Nature. I think it's one charity, it's down in Kew, and if you're local, you could contact them, you can send them an email, express your interest about volunteering. But there are also lots of other nature-based charities around. There's even more now because people are really seeing the value of nature. So I think it's just about reaching out and seeing if you have capacity to give and to support. And I think supporting a charity can look like very different things. It could be the more admin support, like if you're studying, maybe you can provide remote support and supporting them admin-wise. Or if you are local to the charity, maybe it does look like actually working directly with clients. But yeah, I think reaching out is a good way. I've always found kind of building relationships is the best way to get these kind of opportunities.
Do you know if the charity now is receptive to having undergraduates phone them up and saying, hey, can I help out?
I don't know for sure. I think they are. I think they're hiring now. I think they have a lot more employees than when I was there, and they're always open to volunteers. So I think it's worth reaching out. I can't say for sure, but I'm pretty sure they are open to more support in any capacity.
Do we know what it is about nature that can help improve people's mental health?
Yeah, there's lots of things. I think one of the main things we can talk about is it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, so your rest and digest part of your nervous system. So that going outside, engaging your senses has, scientifically proven benefits because it activates that part of your nervous system. So it will lower your blood pressure, make you feel a little more relaxed, more focused.
So you had a good experience working there, but you didn't work there forever. How did your work there come to an end, and what did you transition to after that?
So I could have stayed there forever, and I would have loved to. I think it was just a personal decision in terms of career prospects and, again, social mobility, like I mentioned earlier. I don't come from a wealthy background, and something I really wanted when I was younger was to be financially secure, and that wasn't something at the time that I could get through working in charity. So I started thinking about what other things I could do. And in that kind of process, I reflected back to not only my degree, but also my time at IBM. And I was someone who was fascinated with technology. And back then there was the big thing was big data and advanced analytics. And I remember being really intrigued by that. And, we're gathering more and more data, as everyone knows, all the time. And there's only ever a growing need to make sense of all of that. And so I was thinking about that. I kind of had that in my mind. And then I was reflecting on psychology and how I really enjoyed the analysis. I would really get lost in analysis of, when we're doing SPSS and, actually analyzing all the data. And I was like, okay, that's really interesting. And if you have those data analysis skills, that's something that's applicable to every industry and every purpose. And I was someone who was really interested again in social and environmental impact. So I thought if I learn this, then that's something that can take me anywhere career-wise. And I was looking at things at the UN as well, and they were talking a lot about big data and how that can help. And I was like, okay, this could be a really good thing to do. And again, in my typical fashion, started looking at opportunities that were around to get more experience and to build my network in that area. And I came across a hackathon, a data hackathon, which anyone who doesn't know is just typically a very short-term project that you might do with a team. You're typically solving a problem. It can be a couple of days, or this one was actually a couple of weeks. And it was specifically designed for women to get more experience of working in data. So it was designed to work around your job. And so I joined this hackathon, and it was amazing. And I worked with a team, and it was my first exposure to data analysis really outside of psychology. I was like, wow, I can it really made me realize how valuable the psychology of stats and data analysis, how applicable it was to the real world.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I did that experience. So I finished that hackathon, and I reached out to a couple of people that ran it. Building relationships, again, is one way that I get access to different opportunities and experiences. So I reached out and just, said, thanks for this, a really good experience. Can I have 15 minutes or so just to learn more about your role? I'd love to know more about what you do and what it looks like. And we had a conversation, and it was really good. And then she ended up letting me know that there were some entry-level roles that were available at her company. So she worked at a data consultancy. And so I applied. using a lot of my psychology knowledge, the technical understanding at least, my technical skills, I really played on those for that process. And then through that, I got my first entry-level role in data as a consulting analyst.
It's great to hear that the skills you learned in your psychology degree are useful. That's a good point to make, because when you're doing your undergraduate degree in psychology, you have to learn statistics in order to analyze data that is inevitably concerned with human psychology. But you can use those same statistics, those same analyses, to analyze data with respect to loads of different things.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so you had that entry-level role. Are you in that role still, or where have you moved on to?
No, so it's been a bit of a journey since then. So that was an entry-level consulting analyst role. And for people who don't know what that is, it's a lot of, you as a consultant, you're on different projects. It could be a couple months, it could be a year or so. And I was building dashboards with different tools like Tableau and Power BI. These are all data visualization tools. And I did that for like a year or so. And then unfortunately, the company was shut down. So we were all made redundant. Fortunately, at the time, though, there was a massive boom and demand for data consultants and business intelligence professionals. So my role was also business intelligence developer. So I was able to quite quickly, to be honest, jump over to another consultancy, very similar, doing similar work. I could utilize all those skills from my first job. So there I was a business intelligence consultant and working mainly with Power BI, which is Microsoft's data visualization tool, and helping clients to these dashboards that they need to get all the insights they need for their business. And that was great. And I was there for a couple of years. I got promoted to senior. And then that company got acquired by the company I work for now, which is Accenture. And now I work at Accenture. And yeah, so now I'm a senior data consultant and associate manager. So more of the same, but a lot of opportunity. Accenture is a global company.
Okay. You said a few things I'm curious about.
Yeah.
One is this dashboard thing. So my wife, who is also a social psychologist like myself, she left academia. Yeah. She originally got a position as a data analyst for NATS, the air traffic control company. And she kept on talking about building these dashboards. And not something that a social psychologist really ever does, but evidently it's something that we can do. What is a dashboard, and how do you make it? and how does it help people?
Yeah, sure. The idea, right, is there's some stats and numbers that someone will typically always need to be referring back to. So if you're in sales, you'll want to know which products sold the most over a specific time period, like the past 5 months, for example. Or you might want to see which products go out of stock more. You might want to be looking at customer segmentation. So it's the idea that every time you need this information, you don't want to be conducting analysis. You don't want to be running your Python script or R script every time. Like instead, we can build something called a dashboard, which is typically just like one page, ideally, where it has all of those stats that you need regularly there, and it's updated regularly with the latest data as well. And so a dashboard will particularly usually have data visualization. So you'll have bar charts, line graphs, whatever visualizations you need for that particular analysis. So you can have filters at the top of the page, which might filter the whole dashboard by whatever you need. So like a product, you might want to look at sales for a particular product. So you select that product in the top, and they'll have access to all these kind of drag and drop visuals. And I think one reason I really love dashboards is because you require the kind of technical side of things, but it's also really relies on visual design. And that was something I took so much from our cognitive psychology modules, understanding like Gestalt theory, color theory, understanding how people process information. So for me, it really was like bringing together everything. And it also has that creative element. And then you go through things like user testing. That reminded me as well of psychology and doing research, because you'll give this tool to a user and you'll ask them, what was their experience? Did they enjoy it? Did they get what they needed? You might do some observational studies of them actually using it to see how they use it. Is it in the way that you expected? So it's so much more for me. It was so much more than a dashboard, but it was exactly why I wanted to do it, because it brings in so much of psychology, like the technical and the less technical as well.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question.
No, that makes sense why it's something that a psychologist or someone who has studied psychology would end up doing. Would it be fair to say that building a dashboard is kind of like building an app that your stakeholders, the people that hire you to do your work, can use to then more easily look at the data that they...
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's for people who maybe have less data literacy, and it makes these insights accessible to them.
Okay. I guess another question I have for you that I think a lot of people might be wondering is, obviously you've used what you've learned as an undergraduate, but there must have been other things that you have learned on top of that in order to do this.
Yeah.
So how did you learn those things? Was it, did you train yourself? YouTube videos? Did you take any courses?
Yeah. So in the industry, there are a lot of certifications, too many to be honest. But I think for me, the key ones have been the training that's actually offered by the tools that you're learning. So for Power BI, for example, I did a certification called PL 300, which is a Power BI data analyst certificate. So as part of that, you can do their online learning. Teaches you all about how to use, and then at the end of the test you get your certificate. So I did that, and you can kind of progress. They have a lot of different certifications. I think that was one of the kind of initial ones, and you can go on to take more expert certifications. The same is for Tableau. So Tableau is another data visualization tool, so I worked my way through those as well. One thing I realized, one of my limitations or gaps in my skill set was a data analysis language, and there was always this debate of like, do you use R or do you use Python? And I took the advanced quantitative module at Southampton where I did learn R, but I didn't really see it being used too much around me. It's a really good social science language and you can use R, but I saw Python being used a lot. So I wanted to learn Python. And I tried to do it with online courses and in my own time, and it just wasn't working for me. So I ended up looking for a course that I could do, a university course. So then that led me to do my postgraduate certificate that I'm doing now in data science. And I did that specifically to learn Python in the context of data science.
When you were an undergraduate student, would you have imagined that you'd now be building dashboards, learning programming languages to analyze data? No? Okay. I guess I can imagine that there's many undergraduate students, psychology students right now that might be listening to what you're doing and they're thinking, okay, that's not for me. But it might actually be for them. They just, like you, don't quite know it yet.
Yeah.
So if you were to stand in front of a group of undergraduate students and give a talk about what you do and how it might be something that could interest them, how might you convince them that this is something that they might want to do?
So I would just kind of say, don't be too quick to dismiss things, stay curious about them. Also, I think it's worth talking to more people about what they actually do, because I think sometimes we can have a concept in our heads of what it looks like, or, even from what I've said now, people might take more if we had a follow-up conversation. I'd go into more detail about it. So I think, don't be too quick to dismiss things. And I think I would just reiterate the things I've said about why this is such a perfect role for psychology students and why it actually brings together so much and so many of the skills that we learn. And if you enjoyed psychology, then I don't see why you wouldn't enjoy this as well.
You've had quite the journey from doing an A-level in psychology to an undergraduate degree, having a year in employment, and you've wiggled your way into your current career. But, you're still young. Do you have any further goals? What's left to do for you?
Yeah. As I've mentioned, environmental impact and social impact has been something that's very important to me and one of my values throughout my career. And it's something that I went into data knowing that my end goal was to be using this data, my analysis, my skills for good. So the next steps for me are figuring out what that looks like. And I'm doing at work, I'm doing exactly what I've done throughout my whole career and education, is I'm getting involved in things that help me really explore what that might look like.
Okay.
So I'm working on developing some tools that help businesses look at their social impact. And those tools might be AI focused and things like that. So for me, it's really, I've got the skills. I've been on the front line developing all the latest skills that are needed in data. And now it's like, okay, how do I do that and apply that in a way that keeps me fulfilled throughout my career? So I'm not sure what that looks like. But at the moment at Accenture, there's a lot of opportunity, and obviously a lot of things are changing with AI, and there's even more room to be ensuring that AI is being applied ethically and being used to help companies with their social impact, environmental impact. So yeah, I'm not sure specifically what's next, but I know that there's general direction, and I'm starting to explore what that might look like.
Well, once again, Megan, thank you for spending the time to talk to us today. I think there's a lot that we have learned from your experience.
Thank you.
And so good luck with those next steps as well.
Thank you so much.
A big thanks to Megan for coming on the podcast. Many thanks to Lucas Bland, James McDonald, Arantxa Novella Franco for their assistance in the podcast studio. The music was written by Scott Peterson and performed by the Iowa State Drumline.